Hey guys, my name is Forcel. I'm a professional Rainbow Six coach with Dark Zero. I'm also a Challenger League analyst with the North American Challenger League desk. And today I wanted to go over the patch notes. We just got a new mid-season patch notes delivered to us by Ubisoft, and I want to give you guys my 2 cents on what's going on. Trying to help you guys gauge, how this changes the meta, how this changes competitive play, and how it would change for yourself in ranked. All right, so just going into the win delta, I'm not going to go into these too long, but in general, the picture that I'm getting here is there's not like a heavily dominant operator like there were in previous patches. I remember Finka, who's dropped all the way from being off the chart before down towards, the 10 to 20%. And I think that's appropriate. I think right now we've got a very good balance of operators that are coming out here. Nook's about the highest in terms of win rate. And it's probably one of the reasons she's getting banned so much. But overall, I think we're in probably one of the best balancing states for the attack that we've been in a long time. And I could say the exact same thing about the defensive side. Obviously, with defense, it's a little bit easier to defend than it is to attack, which is why you'll see some of these win rates be a little bit higher. But a couple picks that stand out. I mean, obviously, Alibi is a big outlier here. She's past the 60%. And I don't think this is necessarily because she's not balanced properly. I think this is just because she's got a 1.5 with a high rate of fire gun. She's got a bailiff, so she assists in how the site gets set up. She has impacts, which makes her an excellent roamer. On top of that, she can create her own rotates. And overall, it's just a fun operator play when she's a 3-speed. So she is very high. And maybe she does need a little bit of nerfing. I would say, if anything, you take away her 1.5 and just give her 1x again, and it'll probably bring her closer to this margin here. But in general, she's just a fun operator, which is why I think she's played so much. Valk being high makes sense. She's always a very strong pick. And Cav being high, I think, has got to do directly with Nook being so high. I think Cav is a direct counter to Nook. And with Cav being able to isolate the isolated player that Nook is when they do their basement entries, for example, on, let's say, basement on Villa, Cav's a great counter to finding the Nook and getting an early interrogation. So it makes sense why her win rate is spiked a little bit here. In terms of ban rates, seeing Thatcher up here, it's kind of confusing to me. I mean, there's EMP grenades right now, so there's not really a whole lot of reason to bring Thatcher all the time. He's still a strong operator, but I don't think he deserves the 80% win rate. I mean, he's banned more than Mira and Valk is, which kind of goes to show that there's maybe a different issue going on of why he's banned so often. I think it's more to do with conditioning. And people have been conditioned to ban them this whole time, but or maybe they're on their phones and they're not really paying attention to their attacker bans, so they just click Thatcher and just move forward with the bans. So I honestly expected him to drop significantly higher. I expected Nook to be a little bit higher too, but eventually this number is lowering. So maybe over time we'll be able to see Thatcher return to a state of normalcy. I don't think he's overpowered. I don't think he's overtuned. He requires a lot of team coordination to be effective right now. So it doesn't make sense why he's so high. Jackal makes sense in the rank sphere just because it's really hard to roam when you're being Jackal tracked. A lot of people who play in even in high ranked, don't understand how to rotate or position themselves properly to not be abused by Jackal. And often when teams are going for a roam clear, Jackal just makes it a lot easier to do. So that makes sense why he's so high. And then same with the bans on defense. Defensive bans, they all make a lot of sense. You've got Mira, who's a very strong operator. She's hard to deal with. It requires a lot of team coordination. Often is like a mini game within the game to clear mirrors to deal with. And if you're running out of time doing things like the roam clear, you're going to really struggle clearing Mira. So it makes sense why her ban is so high. She does influence the game heavily. And then Valkyrie is just a very, he kind of calms down a lot of playstyles, especially in these high elo games like Platinum and above, Platinum, Diamond, Champion games. Everyone's swinging like crazy. You don't want to give them any extra ammunition to swing even more aggressively with info. So seeing Valk ban kind of makes sense. All right. So going into the operator balancing. First interesting ban is Dokkaebi. All right, so Dokkaebi's logic bombs now affects all defenders in support mode. All right, so what does this mean? So that means your dead defenders who aren't active anymore. That means new players who are joining in progress games. Anyone who is not actively playing, the logic bomb, in addition to affecting the players that are alive, will now affect the players in support mode. And this is an interesting change. This kind of changes her dynamic a little bit, because what they're talking about here is they want to create more openings to get the plant down, right? So for executes. And it also kind of, maybe gives the player who's playing Dokkaebi, or the team that's using Dokkaebi, a little bit more, caution when just using both Dokkaebi calls on the roam clear itself, because that's typically how she's used right now. She's not really used a whole lot in the execute. She's mainly used to clear roamers, right? Because droning's hard to get, information's hard to get. Dokkaebi helps compensate for that. So now with this, there's now an incentive to leave your Dokkaebi call until your execute. And what this will do is it'll cancel out the bulletproofs, it'll cancel out the Maestro cameras, and it will allow you to get plants down with info. Don't forget, Dokkaebi also has 2 smoke grenades in her pocket. She is now an excellent execute operator, maybe even the operator you might choose to go for plants, because she can smoke, she can call, she can go for her execute. Right? And there's not really a whole lot defenders can do to counter it, because all their active info is going to be disabled while the Dokkaebi call is going live. So this will be really interesting. I don't know if it changes her too much in terms of pick rate. I think she's still picked quite a bit right now, especially in competitive play. With how fast the game is going, Dokkaebi helps counter a lot of this aggressive defense that we've been seeing recently. But this will help her in the execute meta. Rook armor now grants withstand. I mean, this was a change that I thought was going to happen last patch. It's been in the test server for a while now. This just makes sense. This gives Rook armor some viability, and where it's the most interesting and I find the most effective is it's a direct counter to the grenade meta, right? You see these grenades flying into clear positions, and you know the defender gets blown up immediately. Well, with Rook armor, you would get downed, but now not only do you get downed, you have the ability to pick yourself back up. This is a great change. This is going to allow the defenders a little bit more ability to play in a specific location and not have to worry about just being, you know, blown away by the attackers. And I think where this is going to be most impactful is going to be in ranked. I don't know if we'll see too much of it in competitive play. There are a few instances where I could think it could be a little bit viable, but I don't think it's going to be overall a big change for competitive play at all. This change, however, I think is the biggest change of the patch, right? So Doc, his projectiles are now healing to 200 HP, down from 40 or up from 40, and he's getting a Baylift as a secondary. So there's 2 big things happening here. So the first thing is you're no longer going to require Doc to stim you multiple times in order to get your HP back up. We've all been there where we're 20 HP and we're trying to get back to site and we're trying to find the Doc. Hey, Doc, heal me. He heals you, he reloads, he heals you again, and now you're back at full HP. Well, that's changed. Each of his stims now heal you for 200 HP. This also means, and we'll get down here in a second, when we talk about overheal, but that means you're going to be back to full HP automatically, and you're going to have a 20 HP overheal every single Doc stim charge, right? So that already makes him competitive with operators like Thunderbird, who've basically relegated Doc to the back seat because Thunderbird just was able to out-heal Doc in every facet of the way, because she can use the resets of her Kona stations to just heal people back up to full health really quickly, right? So this is a big change. This is a great buff for Doc. And then the second thing is he adds his Bailiff as a third secondary. This is a massive change. I know they say the target change here is casual, but this is actually going to affect competitive play, because there are some instances where I can see teams wanting to bring that heal operator where they would normally have brought a Thunderbird, where they might be inclined to bring the Doc instead. Why? Well, now he's got a Bailiff. He can help with site setup, right? His projectiles, or his stims, heal for 200 HP, so you're going to get a big boost, right? And he's got a 1.5 on his MP5. This is a very big change. This might actually see a resurgence of Doc in competitive and high-ranked play, just because he's got all the tools that you would want. And he's got a fun gadget that can heal himself back up. So there's some instances where I could see this being viable. Like think of Mezzanine on Chalet, right? Normally you would have a reinforcement. You'd have a player playing in library, maybe a roamer playing around piano, maybe a guy top blue. Doc can now heal them from all those positions, and he has 3 armor, which means he can take some of the extra damage from the nades and keep himself up, and he can do all the site setup that he needs there, and he's got a 1.5. So that might be a scenario in which a Doc player is highly effective to kind of bring. So overall, this is a really good quality of life change for Doc. I really like the Rook one's good. The withstand means you don't really need the Doc anymore to make Rook viable, because they used to have to be in tandem together. But this is a good compensation for Rook not needing Doc anymore, and kind of makes them their own separate operators, and I really like that. Okay, so Castle. He's getting the M45 Musak. I mean, I guess this doesn't do anything. This is like one of those like, but why would you do this? No one in their right mind should be bringing either pistol on Castle, because he has the super shorty shotgun, which does all your sight rotations, is extremely, surprisingly a good shotgun at close range. Better than some of the primary shotguns. So it doesn't make sense why you'd ever bring the pistol. It's a fun gun. I like that pistol. It's probably one of my favorite pistols in the game, but it's just completely unrealistic to expect anyone to bring it over the shotgun. So it's like thumbs up for getting it, but it doesn't really do anything. It's like Thatcher having a shotgun. You know, it doesn't really do anything. It doesn't change anything about his kit. Cali, increased damage from to 135 from 127. So this is to counter Rook's ability. I'm curious how this works. Currently with Cali, you can only one-shot body shot a 1 armor, so a 3 speed, like a bandit or an alibi. I'm curious to see if this change from 127 to 135 allows you to one-shot 2 armors. We'd have to go in the test server and see that. Currently, if you hit a 2 armor in the chest with Cali, you get them in a down but not out state. I'm curious if this overrules that and basically makes 2 armors one shot to Cali. It'd be a nice little buff to her. She's a finicky operator. She's really difficult to balance because on one hand she can get to be extremely overpowered if she's one-shotting and killing everybody, but on the other hand she's got to hit that shot and it takes a lot of skill to do that. So at high elo, I would expect to see Cali played a little bit more, and maybe she has a little bit more viability in comp, but overall I don't think it's too big of a change for her. I think it's just the right amount. Cade and Goyo are the same change, so both of their TCSGs are getting a 50 bullet ammo count increase. This is pretty significant, but I don't think it'll change the overall state of both these operators. Basically, what it's going to allow you to do is it's going to allow you to do sight setup on defense and maybe make some rotates and some line of sights a little bit more frequently. I mean, that is exactly what it's going to do, but it doesn't really change the fact that Cade's AUG and Goyo's Vector with a 1.5 specifically are just better guns to bring than the TCSG. They're far more reliable. And even though the TCSG now has the suppressor that it can bring to it, it's just, and a 2x, it just doesn't compete, I think, especially with the Vector. I think the automatic fire, the rate of fire of the automatic weapons just is superior to the TC. That being said, in competitive play, I could see TCs being brought a little bit more just because it helps with sight setups and helps bring a little bit more dynamicism to, or a little bit more dynamic defenses to the team that decides to bring it. You know, maybe instead of bringing a mute shotgun now, they can bring a K TCSG to replace it. Okay, so I was talking about this a little bit. I kind of hinted at this a little bit when I was talking about Doc, but overheal is being reduced from 40 to 20 HP. So that means if you get a stim boost or you get a Finka boost, you will only go up an additional 20 HP instead of the previous 40. Now remember, Doc used to stim for 40, so this is kind of a direct counter or kind of like a balance to Doc as well. But I think where this is more relevant is in Finka, right? And one of the reasons Finka was so annoying, not only did she have an LMG, not only did she have nades and a Gon 6, but she had the ability to overheal all of her teammates, which made defending really difficult because when your gun is only shooting 20 damage per bullet or 30 damage per bullet, getting an extra 40 HP or an extra 20 HP really made a big difference in terms of how many bullets that you required to kill a specific operator, right? If you're used to shooting 5 bullets at an operator, now it requires 6, you know, that could trip you up. Maybe you're dealing with multiple targets, so you're trying to snap shoot between the 2 targets, and now you're being held back because of the amount of damage that it takes to kill them. So I think there's a good change. I think there's a good quality of life change. I don't think overheals are an interesting mechanic, but I think it's more frustrating to people than it is helpful to have. So I personally would like to see overheal removed completely, but I understand why it's there. Because it does give operators like Finka and Doc, you know, some reason to use their gadget before their teammates start dying. And then recoil attachments, recoil bonuses to attachments to 20%. I think this is specifically talking about the flash hider, which is currently sitting at 15% recoil bonus, right? So when you're using the flash hider, it reduces the recoil or the vertical recoil by 15%. So this going to 20% just continues to help the recoil out. I'm curious how this will affect guns like Jaeger's 416C. I think that's probably one of the guns that will be the most heavily impacted by this. I would like to see how this works out, but this is something you have to get in the test server. Overall, I think it's just a quality of life buff, and it's going to help out people who are struggling to control some of the recoil that has been added to the game. So overall, I think these are These are good. Like, these are good designer notes. These are good patch notes for the midseason. Not a whole lot changes here. We still have a major coming up here in November, so it doesn't really change anything dramatically for the major, but it does give a little bit of new twists and turns. It seems like they're trying to focus the game on getting back to maybe an execute meta with the change to Dokkaebi, and the changes to Rook and Doc are going to probably increase their viability, specifically in ranked. Maybe Doc even in competitive play, just because he gets a bailiff. That's a pretty big change. And I do love the fact that Doc no longer has to heal 3 times in a row to get a player back to full HP. He can now get 3 of his teammates back up to full HP. Might be overpowered, but we'll see. It'll be very situational, and that's always been the thing with Doc, is it's always situational of whether or not he's going to be viable. It depends on how your team is taking damage. Predominantly is the main condition that is required for Doc to be useful. I mean, if your team's getting headshot the whole time, it doesn't matter, right? So overall, good changes for years 7 season 3 patch 3. I think these are good. If you guys have any questions on any of the patch notes, or you guys have any comments you guys want to drop them down below, I appreciate any feedback that you guys get on these videos. I'm going to start trying to upload a little bit more regularly. And until then, guys, see you guys next time.